Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the December 18th, Fourth Annual Research Commission meeting. I would like to start by introducing our newest member, Connor Goolsby, who's just appointed Tuesday. And anyways, got a great resume, but rather than me summarizing, I'm going to ask you to just give us a quick little update.
Sure. Yeah, I'll spare you the long introduction, and you're free to interrogate me after the meeting or some other time. But my background is in forestry, natural resources. I went to Virginia Tech. I've worked for DCR as well as the Department of Forestry. I'm a new Arlington resident. I just moved here in April of this year, and I currently work for Loudoun County government, where I'm the stewardship manager, and I'm responsible for overseeing their portfolio of open space easements and working with conservation easements in the county. So very passionate about trees and natural resources, and so happy to be involved and work with all of you. So thanks for having me.
Great, welcome. And do you want to introduce him?
Yeah, sure. Andrew is one of our newest urban foresters. He started last year, and he's been in charge of the circuit tree maintenance program, as well as managing some reviews for DES projects. Andrew, do you want to give some of your background?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm also from a natural resources background from Virginia Tech, so compare notes. But yeah, I graduated Virginia Tech with a degree in urban forestry and a minor in horticulture. And I'm originally from this area, so all the jobs I've had have been sort of in the orbit of the DC metro area. And then I went back to school to WVU for like my master's, working on the Urban Forestry 2020 project, which is about the profession of urban forestry and the future of the profession of urban forestry. And yeah, since then I've when we can get into more details, but I worked as an environmental planner and then an urban forester and an urban forester, now an urban forester. So, so yeah, that's my background.
You're on. It's also the
Oh, yeah.
regional ISA.
Yeah, the Mid-Atlantic chapter of the ISA board. I'm a board member. I was a Society Municipal Arborist intern, where I worked in Canada for a little bit.
Oh, well, welcome. I'm happy to have you. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Ryan. A lot of you already know Ryan, who is with Deacon. We'll do just a quick little.
Sure. Yeah. Ryan Delaney. I'm a principal planner on the long-range planning team for Department of Parks and Recreation. You might remember me from such films as the Forestry and Natural Resources Plan. I was the product manager, which I think the main way I was interacting with you all. And my background is also in environmental science. Was an environmental planner for federal clients for a while, and a natural resources and outdoor recreation planner in William County. Now I'm here doing a little bit of everything in terms of long range policy. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I'm just because we have just so Connor and the benefit of Andy and Connor and too, if you would just go around, Carolyn Haynes, chair of the Forestry and Natural Resource Commission. So let's just go ahead and go around. First names to start. Names would be great.
Sure. Joshua Handler.
Steve Sockwell, also commissioner.
David Howell.
Noreen Hannigan.
Neil Hunter.
Phil Klingelhofer.
Jen Hazen.
Alex Sanders.
And of course,
Vincent Ferrari.
okay, with all of that, thank you for entertaining. I appreciate it. So we are ready to go to public comments. And I believe
Susan, you're on the call, right? No, she was there.
Yep. Nope, I'm here. Sorry. Just came off of mute.
Susan, it's going to take me a moment to pull up your presentation, so hold tight.
Okay.
and I'm sorry you're not here for the cookies too, Susan. We would have shared.
Yeah, you're missing out.
If I had known that.
They look tasty.
Put on the ad. Oh, yeah,
Oh, right.
on the agenda.
Sorry, Steve, I didn't introduce you either. Steve Bernheisel with Arlington Public Schools.
No problem. Sorry to not be there in person with cookies, but thank you very much for the introduction.
We appreciate your participation in the commission as well.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Almost there. Susan asked me to help with this presentation.
Carolyn, are you going to introduce our extension agent.
Oh, yeah, I just realized that Leslie Fillmore is also joining.
Oh, Leslie, thank you. I didn't see
Hi,
you from
everyone.
at our most recent natural. What's your position title?
It's a mouthful. Associate Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources.
Oh, good. I'm glad I didn't try that. Okay, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it, and we're so
Sure.
happy to have you participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
All right, Susan.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Susan Land, and I'm a volunteer with ATAG. As many of you know, last Friday, the tree that you see in these pictures was cut down by the county. As I understand it, this was one of 32 trees in Lyon Park that were slated for removal as part of a tree maintenance program. When the residents of Lyon Park found out about the 32 pending trees, they most objected to the removal of one of them, this one. This tree has been in the median off of Fillmore Street since the 1980s. It's considered the gateway tree to the neighborhood. You can see from the pictures the large, beautiful canopy, the tremendous amount of shade that the tree provides. The residents of Lyon Park rightly feel that this is their tree. This tree is on public property. Their tax dollars paid to have it planted and maintained. They enjoy it every day they pass by. The residents even take on the task of watering this tree during the dry, hot summer months. Back in October, the residents decided to work through their Lyon Park Civic Association to engage both the county and the county board members to work out a compromise or solution that would work for all parties to preserve this tree at least for another few years. As I understand it, after several emails with the county manager, a virtual meeting with the county staff, the county expressed no interest in working with the residents on any alternatives other than tree removal. As a result, last Thursday, a tree cutting crew showed up unannounced and began taking the tree down. Next slide, please. This behavior is not what we expect from our county government. What kind of government refuses to work together with its own citizens to come up with solutions that work for everyone? I hope that this commission will insist on a full accounting in writing of why this tree, this publicly owned tree, was removed in spite of the dozens of resident objections and without any cooperation from the county government. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We'll talk about this at the end of the meeting under new business. And I know that there was a explanation sent around to everyone on commission. A chance to talk about that a little bit more, but thank you, Susan. Appreciate your being here. Okay, next, JD Spain was supposed to be with us this evening, but hasn't come up for the last minute, so he's not going to be here. So that gives us a little more time on our various other items on the agenda. So Alan just got here. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, I have a presentation. Do you want me to email it to you, or what's the best way to put it up here, or is that possible?
Yeah, if you probably weren't anticipating not having any prep time for this being the second time. You could email it to me and I could pull it up as fast as I get it. And I could advance it. Brian, do you want, or you could swap with Ryan, who's next on the agenda.
Go ahead, no.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine. But
Yeah.
I'll email it to you.
Yeah, it'll take probably 5 to 10 minutes to get through the email pipeline, so that might be.
Well, that's true. And that's also assuming I can get on a Wi-Fi here.
Yeah, oh, you should be able to.
Okay, good. Then we will just keep moving things around on the agenda. And Brian thought he had a couple of minutes too. Right?
Yeah, so let me get set.
Do you want to come sit down?
Break.
Sure.
There's more cookies.
All right, folks.
Cookie. Oh, they look good.
I just need to join the meeting.
The sugar high for the rest of the meeting.
Kind of a smart.
So Connor, when did you graduate from Tech?
What's that?
When did you graduate from Tech?
2020.
Okay, wow.
What about you?
2011.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait, so what program were you in?
It's actually biology.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
You guys breaking fight song or whatever. You do.
Right.
I'm not for Tech too.
Oh, man.
That counts for your accent.
Well, you were remote though, right?
Yeah, no, I was in the Falls Church office,
Oh, yeah.
which was mostly in person. Yeah, no.
Well, there were a fair number of people in Arlington County who've gone through the XMR program.
Yeah, it's not really in the same format that it was at that time, but it was almost all in person.
Yeah, I actually did that as well.
Oh, yeah.
You paid a little more, I think it was a little cheaper for those, but.
No,
Stuff.
All right, I think we're ready to go ahead and I appreciate Ryan being here and this is the kind of the 2-year anniversary, exactly, really, of the approval of the Forestry Natural Resource Plan by the county board. So we're getting a 2-year update here. So I appreciate Ryan's coming and telling us what's going on.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for having me. As Chair Haynes said, it's been 2 years since adoption and about 18 months, give or take, since we began our formal implementation process. So yeah, just wanted to thank you all again for having me to kind of go over our status update on implementation items from the FNRP, and then rewinding a little bit for our new commissioners and folks who maybe haven't been staring at this document for the last 2 years, how we develop the plan and what's actually in it, and kind of a little bit of next steps as we look forward. Okay. Cool, everything's working. So I'll start all the way back at the beginning, and I'll try to keep this part brief because I know it's review for a lot of the folks in the room. But at a high level, the FNRP is an element of the county's comprehensive plan, focuses on natural resources across public and private property. For those of you who have been with us for a long time, it's actually a combined update to the Urban Forest Master Plan and Natural Resources Management Plan that were adopted in the early and mid 2000s, respectively. In developing the plan, we really tried to go beyond just sort of mashing those two together and do a combined document and try to develop an integrated ecology-focused approach for environmental planning for the county. One that emphasizes equity, community-wide involvement in terms of education and volunteerism, and a focus on reconnecting nature to daily life. So that was sort of the high-level philosophy guiding the process. I'd like to give a short overview of what's in the plan. Don't worry, I'm not going to inflict like a full in-depth recap. It's 180 odd pages. But I do want to briefly refresh the types of recommendations that are in the plan. So the FNRP is organized around these 4 strategic directions that are up on the slide. These are the sort of broad policy areas that the plan covers, and are basically the chapter organization for the recommendations in the plan. So strategic direction 1, conservation, includes all the recommendations supporting expansion and maintenance of the quality and extent of our natural resources and tree canopy, as well as a lot of our recommendations regarding managing the impacts of development on those resources. Strategic direction 2 focuses on managing the impacts of climate change and exploring the intersection between natural resources, green infrastructure, and mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. And sensing a theme, there's some development impact management recommendations in SD2 as well. Strategic direction 3 is focused on protecting biodiversity. That includes all the recommendations that we developed around habitat connectivity and conservation, land management practices, things of that nature. So the recommendations guiding the deer study, for example, as well as some of our connectivity recommendations to link nodes of habitat that we already have. And then lastly, strategic direction 4 is mainly framed as operational guidance for staff. It includes things like resource inventories, progress reporting on the FNRP, like this briefing this evening, and then on the other side of that coin, reducing the impact of park maintenance and management activities. So a lot of operational changes to the way we do business. As we developed the plan, we heard a lot of community feedback and feedback from staff and other stakeholders, board members, and a list of priority actions of all of those 83 actions that the plan recommends started to take shape. These were selected to emphasize major changes that the FNRP recommended over then current policy, highlight the plan's equity recommendations, and ultimately reflect actions that the community, staff, and board felt would be most impactful. So these were the 10 priorities that the board adopted when they adopted the plan. And then the last element of the actual document I want to touch on this evening is the implementation framework. So this is a matrix. It's the last chapter in the plan that contains all 83 action steps, all the recommendations in the document, and assigns sort of rough planning level timeframes, responsible parties, i.e. different departments in the county, different partners like NVCT, and potential partners, planning level cost estimates, that sort of thing, to kind of guide implementation planning once the document was adopted. So this framework was really the seed of all the implementation planning work that I'm going to talk about tonight. The short-term actions let me back up. The short-term actions are ones that were kind of the focus of some of our implementation over the last 2 years. They're assigned a time frame of between 1 and 3 years to begin working on them in the matrix. So I just want to pin that to the board for later. And that's sort of seeded our implementation approach. So as I mentioned, it's been 2 years since adoption. It's really only been 18 months since we've started really pushing on a lot of these implementation items. And that's because right after adoption, we paused to develop this implementation approach. We spent some time planning, examining the priority actions, the implementation matrix, and some of our ongoing projects that were already ongoing. And we began with the priority actions and our short-term action items in the matrix, and sorted them sort of roughly into 2 categories: large impactful policy shifts, and then straightforward operational changes that we could potentially realize relatively quickly and make a sort of a quick improvement. And then we sort of narrowed that down to 20 individual action steps that were identified to work on in the near term. I'll go over those briefly in a minute, but we presented this approach to the Natural Resources Joint Advisory Group back in June of 2024, and then rolled up our sleeves and started working on these. So I'll give you a quick overview of what's in that work plan, for lack of a better term. This is a quick overview of the high impact changes that we selected. I'm not going to read all of these, but I will leave this up here for a moment for folks to kind of grab a sort of a scope of what we're looking at. It includes selections from each of the strategic directions. Some of these are obviously ongoing. For example, the legislative action at the state level, that's always going to be marked ongoing, will never be finished. Some of them are more discrete and sort of specific actions, like 3.1.6, adopting a native plant requirement. That's a sort of a discrete project we can begin working on. And then others like 1.2.3 are so large and expansive, there's both ongoing and sort of acute elements to them. And then this is the selection of the sort of more operational changes. So again, some of these are ongoing, increasing our focus on ensuring there's no loss of county-owned natural lands. Some of them are changes to existing policies. Some of them are ensuring, for example, that the priorities of the FNRP are reflected in other plans and policies. So a mix of sort of ongoing operational changes and sort of discrete one-time actions, if that makes sense. So that was the implementation approach in a nutshell. Happy to pause for questions now or at the end before I move into the next section, whatever works for you.
Anybody have any questions on any of that?
Okay, great. So I'll turn to the more interesting stuff, frankly, the status update of where we are with all those items. And I'll start with sort of what we've accomplished since adoption. And I'd like to start with the budget. So this is probably old news to most of you, especially because this is last year's operating budget. But I wanted to share a little bit of history about how the FNRP goals have ultimately shaped the last 2 budget cycles and the CIP, which I think is probably one of the, if I can speak out of turn, probably one of the more impactful things that came out of the FNRP process is elevating these issues so that they became reflected here. So the FY25 budget was the first adopted after the FNRP was adopted. And it got us off, I think, to a fairly strong start. So here's what was in that budget. An additional $1 million for tree maintenance to support a 5-year maintenance cycle, $240,000 for the tree canopy fund, new one-time funding for invasives, and additional monies to expand the operating hours of the nature center. So really hitting on a lot of the high points in the FNRP, from not basic, but fundamental urban forestry to that last one that I love to harp on, reconnecting folks to nature in Arlington. The most recent CIP adopted in July of 2024 also reflects those priorities. It includes funding for the Natural Resiliency Program for the next 10 years, for land acquisition, and then also for several construction and master planning projects that will include invasive plant removal, stormwater management, increased tree planting, conservation of existing resources, and biophilic elements. For example, some of those master plans are 3 urban parks, which is open for public comment until December 21st, if you all are interested. And that's in Ballston, for Gateway Park in Roslyn, for Quincy Park, and for Virginia Highlands. So over the next 10 years, quite a bit happening sort of on the capital side. And then more recently with our FY26 budget, several items of one-time funding that will continue to support implementation, including $500,000 to update the community energy plan into a climate action plan, which is set to kick off next year. The $240,000 infusion into the tree canopy fund, additional funding for tree watering, more one-time funding for invasives management, one-time funding for the deer management program, additional funding for the EV fleet expansion, and our funding for our partners at NVCT. So all in all, it's just one-time funding, not sort of continuing funding in this budget cycle, but it's good to see that in a challenging budget year, these priorities didn't fall by the wayside. They're still included. So consider that a win. And then that brings us to the list of projects and action items. I wanted to share first a few of the things that have been completed since adoption. For the next few slides, all of the relevant recommendations in the FNRP are noted in parentheses off to the side. Feel free to fact check me later if you want to go through the document. It's been a while since I've gone through all of it line by line. So just reviewing these quickly, we started using our public site canopy targets espoused in the FNRP in the review of county projects and private development projects. For example, like River House, which was just adopted this weekend. We joined the MWCOG PRISM to support regional collaboration for invasives management. As you all know well, we completed the tree canopy study, and that data has been invaluable to these ongoing efforts and other planning projects around the county. For deer management, I don't want to step on John's toes since I know he was here last month. We've completed our studies and surveys, developed a management plan, and have the sharpshooting contractors on board to begin next year. And then FY25 was also the first full fiscal years where the nature centers received funding to reopen 6 days per week, as I mentioned earlier. The result of that is that we saw a 34% increase in drop-in visitation. That's up from 14,000 visits, up from about 10,500 visits. Since a portion of that year was spent in hiring and preparing for those expanded hours, we do anticipate further increases by the end of FY26. So that I think is great as well. And then lastly, we've updated the reference guide to the landscape standards. This one's admittedly pretty clunky. It's a compendium that, Vincent, correct me if I get this characterization wrong since you live with it more frequently than I do. It's a compendium document of existing landscape regulations and then a side dish of best practices rounded up from various policy documents like the FNRP. So it includes in that section at least a primer on biophilic design, some recommendations around bird-friendly glass, dark skies lighting, things of that nature that are not regulatory requirements, but that we've included to provide the development community with sort of a flag for the direction that we want to see projects go, if that makes sense.
It has the native plants and all here, right?
It does in that section on best practices. In order to, and I'll get to that in our next step slide, but we do have a recommendation in the plan to develop a native plant requirement. That would actually require a zoning change. And once that change is executed, it would then, I should say, if and when it is executed, since that will be up to the board, it will also fall into this compendium document as a summary of existing regulation.
I think it's Bernie Byrne hasn't appeared before a committee for a while. So,
That's true.
Congratulations.
But yeah, I did see him this Saturday. So
Oh, okay.
I can attest that he is healthy and in good form. Okay, so moving on to our ongoing projects, if you can forgive the short victory lap. This is what we're currently working on. So again, probably not news for you, and I feel somewhat embarrassed to even start talking about this in front of Vincent, since he's the expert. Our circuitry maintenance is underway, and imagine you all have had a briefing on that, but this was one of the major equity recommendations in the FNRP to move to a proactive rather than reactive maintenance schedule for our public trees. Anything you want to add, Vincent, please do.
Yeah, it's focused on street trees primarily.
Yep.
Yeah. And the map is slightly updated, but only.
And then for invasive plant management, in FY25, as I said, we had our infusion of one-time funding. We used those funds to begin suppression efforts on an additional 50 acres of natural land, bringing the total acreage under ongoing management to 350 acres out of a total of approximately 540. The additional $100,000 in one-time in funding in the current FY26 budget is being used to continue those suppression efforts on those 50 acres and then maintain the remaining 300 acres that are already under active management. And again, for deer management, you all just had this briefing on last month, but suffice to say, it is ongoing and almost underway. For the natural surface trail study, which is in SD3, currently working to finalize the draft and anticipate that the draft of the recommendations to improve the trail quality in the county. We anticipate that bringing that to the public for their input sometime early next year. Exact timeline TBD. Another significant ongoing effort is making sure other plans and policies that are in process are aligned with the FNRP's policy goals. And for the last year and a half, this has actually been a fairly busy section of our implementation activities, for want of a better term. The PSNP refresh is underway. We kicked off public engagement this fall. The scope is limited, mainly focused on updating our level of service standards and land acquisition policies, not the existing sort of policy recommendations in that plan. More of a technical refresh than a full rewrite. But in terms of intersection with the FNRP goals, that scope aligns pretty perfectly. So we're looking at exploring ways to incorporate climate resilience at a high level into that level of service approach. On land acquisition, we're looking to explore how different county-owned properties, such as those purchased for stormwater management, for example, that are currently public but not part of the parks inventory, might be included in that public space inventory and managed for public access. That has implications for connecting folks to nature. And currently, we're at the early stages of that process, really just analyzing the first round of community input on the goals of the refresh and sort of the goals and the scope of work. We anticipate another round of broad community engagement in the spring to share those results, present preliminary feedback on the level of service, and begin our sort of level of service analysis. And ultimately, any of the recommendations around level of service and land acquisition will be subject to public feedback and board approval. So please stay tuned. But those are two opportunities to kind of ensure that some of the conservation goals in the plan are reflected in the management of our public lands. The other one that's taking a large chunk of our time and I think is a great project is the Arlington's Transportation Future. Again, public engagement was held this fall on draft policies, curb lane uses, and modal priority maps for the plan. There's a lot of intersections here with the FNRP, primarily Strategic Direction 1 and Strategic Direction 3, where all of our space for trees, biophilic elements, and habitat connectivity intersects with the roads and rights of way. So please stay tuned and participate in that process as well. The comprehensive plan update. CPHD is developing a new introductory chapter to the comprehensive plan. Currently, they're analyzing the first round of public input that you guessed it occurred this fall. So it's been a busy year for these things. The sort of principles for this introduction that they brought forward for consideration are derived ultimately from the American Planning Association, but I think most, if not all, of the planning principles align with the FNRP's goal. And there is a specific planning principle in there about harmony with nature. So I think it's off to a good start. at least at a high level, making sure that, these plans all these elements of the comp plan are moving forward sort of in sync, more or less. And there'll be more to come on all three of those in the coming year. So another one is not a comprehensive plan element, but the low residential study. You all are familiar with this. In terms of FNRP, this is really an implementation effort on action step 1.2.3, which is all about sort of managing the impacts of development, making sure there's space for trees, green space, pervious surface. This one is ongoing as well. So I imagine I don't have to remind you all to tune into this one. The study scope is to explore essentially potential amendments to the zoning ordinance to better support stormwater and tree canopy outcomes in the low density residential areas. And that's sort of the sweet spot for action 1.2 in the FNRP. But let me just scroll through my notes. And then the last on this front is the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Climate Action Plan, which is a regional climate action plan that staff across multiple departments reviewed recently. It's consistent generally with the FNRP and a lot of the other county policies and climate-related goals. So a lot of long-range planning has been taking place, and I'm realizing now I probably was a little bit too long-winded running through all of those for you all, but suffice to say, the future is being well looked after. And then lastly, and somewhat related to the last item of reflecting these policies from the FNRP and other planning efforts, we've been working with NVCT staff to begin a more detailed analysis of conservation opportunities in Arlington through the work on their strategic conservation plan. With the PSMP refresh coming forward and some of the policies around land acquisition and level of service, for example, it's timely that our partners have been doing all of that great work. And it really, I think, from the FNRP's perspective, gives us a little bit of a springboard for examining the habitat connectivity and corridors recommendations in strategic direction 3, which we haven't had the capacity to do any sort of real or staff or contractor led GIS analysis on yet, for example. So it's been a fortuitous sort of dovetailing of priorities, which has been great. Okay. And then lastly, while we continue to work on all those ongoing projects, we're planning for the next batch of implementation items. These are sort of our medium-term goals. And we anticipate beginning work on most of these in the next calendar year. The first, to Commissioner Handler's point, is 3.1.6, the native plant requirement recommendation. To date, we've been doing some additional background research with our subject matter experts here on county staff, as well as some additional benchmarking and conversation with our colleagues at Alexandria. Alexandria's policy, which has been adopted, was the model for ours that we put in here. So we wanted to check in with them a little bit on how their journey through the implementation process and how it's been working has been going, and it's actually been going quite well from their perspective. So we're hoping to turn to this item next year when there's a little bit more capacity from the relevant departments for a more formal study, but we've been chipping away at it, doing the background research in the meantime. On the natural surface trails front, once the study wraps up, we'll be looking in the back half of the year, most likely, maybe even into the following year, to look at implementation. There's a portion of that project includes staff training for trail maintenance and construction. And with that and with volunteer work and the new plan, hopefully to guide that, we should be able to start ticking off some of the more egregious erosion issues and more simple like physical fixes on the ground in the coming year and a half. And then lastly, and I think one of the other big ones is the climate action plan. I mentioned this earlier. In February, the board signed a resolution calling for the development of the community energy plan and climate action plan. And that is looking to kick off next year. This one has a lot of overlap with the FNRP, especially strategic direction 2, our climate change chapter. So I imagine this one will be taking a lot of bandwidth and for good reason. So those are our 3 kind of upcoming efforts. Although I say that optimistically, I think this list will keep us quite busy probably beyond what I project it will. So, and with that, that sums up the sort of implementation update and recap of the planning process. Turn it back over to the chair for any questions or comments or discussion.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
You can tell Ryan's been a great staff person to work with on all of this, so it keeps us up to date. Are there questions for Ryan about anything in particular?
Thanks for a great presentation. A little more how you see the comp plan affecting this and not affecting it, because I've heard various things as I've gone around the last couple of months on the comp plan. In sync is one way of putting it. Others, it's like, it'll help us prioritize our plans. It's like, well, wait a minute, all the plans and priorities. It seems all more in the in sync camp or more of the kind of.
From my perspective, yeah, it's what it's really trying to replace, like backing up, is we have an existing introduction to the comprehensive plan that dates from, if I'm correct, I think the 60s, maybe a little bit later than that. That doesn't include a lot of the elements that are already in the comprehensive plan. So it has like a pretty prescribed sort of, it's not quite a scope of work, but a pretty prescribed description of what the comprehensive plan should help plan for, essentially. The goal with this rewrite is to bring that introduction into alignment with sort of our existing policy priorities. So that's my understanding of the process. And I think starting with the American Planning Association guiding principles that are, if not perfect, at least come from the 21st century and kind of have a lot of the pockets of comprehensive planning work that the county already indulges in, engages in, is probably a better way to say that, sort of contained within their bounds. I think it's very much in sync with the work we've sort of already put in on things like
coordinate the existing plans, not make like certain plans more priorities than others.
Correct. Yeah. The update to the introduction to the comprehensive plan will not in and of itself change any of the existing comprehensive plan elements. All of those would still need to go through a rewrite and adoption process should, new policy items be want to be added or reprioritized. So it may help us highlight a lot of synergies across across the whole comprehensive plan. We have a lot of overlapping policies between, for example, the FNRP, the PSMP, the Historic and Cultural Resources Plan. Yeah, I think I'm blanking on the exact name. Stormwater, Chesapeake Bay. So the climate action plan is actually explicitly taking that crosswalk into account as well. So I think things are sort of coming together.
Other questions for Ryan? Steve?
So very encouraging to see the projects submitted through this budget cycle so far. Are there any projects that are being delayed or negatively affected by the county's shortfall?
That is, I believe, a conversation for the spring. I'm not sure yet. From the county manager's conversation at the board meeting on Tuesday, I would imagine so, but I do not know yet what, if any of those will be.
Okay.
And I might not be the best person to ask about that. I'm not typically involved in those, but I will relay the question to our division chief who kind of handles the CIP planning from our end.
But it really would be helpful when you get more information to come back and tell us what they are so that we can comment on it.
Any questions, comments?
DOT and the Park Service on especially facing pockets of land around Arlington. You just say on that front, maybe you're not the person asking me that got that nice photo up. Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
I think from the policy perspective, and you're right, I'm not the person to be asking about this. From the policy perspective, joining the regional prism gives us a greater sort of platform to engage in that regional collaboration. That was the recommendation in the FNRP. So I think we're on the right track as to how that sort of boots on the ground collaboration with our management partners in the county limits is going. I would have to reach out to Jen Souls and all.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Sure.
Really appreciate it. It's
Very
good
good.
to see it moving forward.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Do we have Alan's presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So Alan, our first, I sent you an email, but our first Davy's family is not able to join us after all, so that's why things got bumped a little.
Yep, all good. It's happened.
Appreciate your, everybody wants to get in something while we're waiting.
You don't take it all home, it seems.
That's right.
Where's somebody then? Another one. Oh, no.
If everyone's taking it, no, I'm fine.
Problem with having meetings yesterday, I already had 5 today.
Oh, yeah, I'll get
It's
a
the
couple
holidays.
more,
It's good for you.
Yeah.
All the basic food groups.
All right, so anyway, I appreciate Alan being here. You are the executive director?
I am, and is this in presentation mode at this point? It's great. Yes, I am. And Ryan, brought up a couple of things related to what we're working on. But I should also note Phil Klingel-Hofer, who's over there talking to Ryan, is on NBCT's board, so he knows this work well and wanted to call that out. So yeah, you can go to the next slide, Vincent. But we are, for those that don't know, Northern Virginia's Regional Land Trust. You can go to the next slide as well. Probably can go through that quickly.
No, it's slow at responding.
Okay.
I'm not sure why. There we go.
Okay. We're Northern Virginia's Regional Land Trust. We've been working to protect natural lands and waters throughout our region since 1994. We have a 10-person staff, hopefully growing to 12 or 13 over the next couple of years. And you can go to the next slide, Vincent. We are working in a pretty large area of Northern Virginia, and in fact, some areas that many would say is not Northern Virginia. We're doing some of our first work in King George and Caroline counties, Spotsylvania, and there's really an interesting dynamic within our organization with all of the development pressure and data centers in other parts of our region, where we should be focusing most of our time. But you can also see, based on the blue dots that we've protected, that we have a long history of working, especially along the river. But our organization was originally the Fairfax Preservation Trust. And so Arlington and Fairfax were really home for NBCT for many years and continue to be. Over those 30 years of our work, we've now protected nearly 200 individual nature preserves and private lands totaling over 9,200 acres, and work annually with almost 300 landowners on existing projects. Next slide, please. This is a microcosm of our work in Arlington. Not surprisingly, many of our protected lands are in North Arlington and not far from the Parkway. But we are at any given point working with 5 to 7 landowners each year. We're considering putting their land in conservation easement or protecting it in some way. Those can also be businesses. We also hear a fair amount about land donations or land purchases if we be available to do those, and those are very case by case. But these are projects that we steward and work on every year, already protected. And then you could add a whole nother layer of dots of places that are in active conservation conversations with county residents. Next slide, please. As I think you all know, and Ryan's gone over some of the details of, we do have an MOU between Arlington and NBCT, which has been active for about 15 years. The county funds us annually to do conservation work as their official land trust, which allows us to lead and cooperate on land conservation efforts and work with DPR, work with Ryan, work on the FNRP, be involved heavily in the public spaces master plans, and doing a lot of outreach and engagement and education of county residents. That relationship has been strong, but I should note that last year's funding for NBCT probably came at the last minute and was quite hotly debated. I do appreciate this commission's effort and support of us in our budget last year. And from everything we're hearing, there's no reason to think we won't be very much on the chopping block again this coming spring, with a lot of effort needed to protect $87,000 for us to continue our work here. Next slide, please. We have also just finished some very significant strategic planning in which we went out to the public. We worked with many partners and stakeholders, including Arlington leaders, about how we should be doing our work. And these are really the results of that plan in terms of what the community wants to see us doing. Prioritize our strategic conservation to not just do what people call us to do, but really be looking at where we can be pulling different pieces of conservation together to build something larger and to utilize strategic mapping, continue and even build on higher levels of stewardship for the lands we already protect, which in a climate change developing world becomes harder and harder each year. Real integration of our idea, those are diversity principles, and working more with communities of color in both Arlington and throughout Northern Virginia, expanding of partnerships to build on the work that we do while working with more and more groups that do similar conservation and have similar conservation outcomes. Build a policy shop. We already have a little bit of that in-house, but ultimately hire a policy expert to be able to be engaged at high-level policy discussions throughout Arlington and Northern Virginia, and then really increase our communications reach so that our brand and our mission are known to this region. Next slide, please. It's an example of a lot of the community engagement we do. We are out often doing kayak cleanups, invasive poles. We are at environmental festivals. We host many of these, but we also join others. And it's a way for us to be engaged in the community and where we hope to see you and other residents and want to be involved in more type events that we hear about from you and other residents when we can be. Next slide. So I think everybody probably knows what a conservation easement is. We can move pretty quickly through these, but our work and the world that we live in really wouldn't be possible without conservation easements being available to landowners. And for the quick primer, essentially you need to have development rights to give up on your property in order to reap tax benefits from both the federal government and state government to put a conservation easement on property. If you do that, though, they are permanent. They ride with the land for as long as in perpetuity. That land does, though, still remain in private ownership, and you can sell it. And it is all voluntary and a landowner initiated choice. And I should note Virginia's tax benefits for doing conservation easements are some of the best in the country. We have protected over 1 million acres of land in the Commonwealth with the land preservation tax credit here. So it's a model that other states try to build off of, and that we have used very well across the Commonwealth, I think, to protect huge swaths of natural Virginia. Next slide.
I just want to stop on that one though, real quickly. On the tax benefits, Arlington is the only local jurisdiction that does not honor those taxes.
Well, Arlington's the only local jurisdiction that does not offer property tax abatement for doing conservation easements. And we have pushed them hard on that, and they have roundly kicked us out of the room when we have tried. I don't think it would be a lot of money, honestly, but many people who come to us who want to consider conservation want to know if doing that will also help with their property taxes. The answer here is no, and the answer is everywhere else in Northern Virginia, yes. I will say that your land will be devalued by doing conservation easements, and so your tax liability may go down. But because Fairfax, Alexandria, and Stafford and Prince William want to incentivize more landowners to do conservation, they're willing to abate all landowners' property taxes if you do a conservation easement. But in a world where tax base is a problem in Arlington. We've been told it's not a viable option at this point in time.
How many properties do you all have in Arlington?
38.
We're not talking about a lot.
Not talking about a lot. I don't think there'd be a run on the system, or if we announced it, it'd be nice, but it wouldn't happen. Next slide, please. The conservation values we're looking for in anything from a 1/4 acre property here in Arlington to 500 acres out in our further suburbs are here, and I don't need to read them. But you've got to be able to demonstrate these values in order to have conservable open space. And we have to come out and do an assessment of that, and we'll do so for anyone free of charge to see if you have an opportunity. Next slide. The restrictions that are typically put on easements, also probably not surprising, and I don't need to read them. But these are important restrictions that we then enforce legally, if necessary, through the conservation easements that we hold to ensure over landowner changes and time that those easements remain protected. And each easement is very unique and very different. And though we've got model easements and templates, they all end up pretty quickly diversifying from each other depending on the type of property. Next slide, please. About our easements, I mentioned we've got a real variety. We protect historic homes and properties. We've got sites ranging from 1.18 acres there along the Custis Trail to really, for this area now, large farm properties in Loudon, Fauquier, Spotsylvania, and everything in between. So we are fairly conversant and work on a really wide variety of landscape in our region and have experience with all of them. Next slide. We also have a lot of nature preserves that are either open to the public or that we now own, upwards of 30 different properties. Most of them are pretty small, but you'll see we have a great blue heron rookery in Stafford County that's 70 acres that we manage, and a lot in between. At any point when we're able and can open properties for public access, we do, but they are always very light touch and minimal on interpretation. Not only because we don't have the resources to manage them in that way, but because we generally are making them for nature first. Next slide. And a huge amount of the work we do is relationship building. It can take years to sort of cultivate, someone from being semi-interested in doing conservation to a point in their life or that things have happened where they're now ready. And so that can take decades in some case. And so we're constantly working with landowners at all levels, whether it's land we've already protected or people that have shown interest in the past, as well as building with our partners to have people understand what conservation means in an urban, suburban environment, which is a challenge for some, and I think takes a lot of explanation and a lot of work on the ground to, really map, in some cases, every tree you have on your property, every piece of natural resource, so that you can see what sort of quality is there. An example of sort of what urban conservation means for us. This is a property on 26th Street North in Arlington that is directly above Donaldson Run and across from the university. And this is a story that the county knows well and others may know well too. But the property the property to the left of the red was the home of an elderly woman in Arlington who we started working with in 2009 because she was interested in protecting not only her home but the vacant lot adjacent to it. Over many years, she realized that a conservation easement wasn't really going to make financial sense for her. But around 2014, she said, "I'm going to leave this property to you in my will." And we said, great, but she was healthy and fairly young at that point. And we said, we're just gonna have to steward this relationship and hope that that sticks over what could be 20, 25 years. Fast forward to 2021, she unfortunately ended up with terminal cancer, and we started chatting with her again at that point. She really wanted to talk about her legacy and where we were with the property. And she had at that point decided to donate the portion in red to NBCT and the portion in yellow to the county, which had been a change from the last time we had seen her. But the portion below did abut Donaldson Run and county property, and it made some sense, I think, to do it that way. So when she unfortunately passed away in 2023, a full 14 years after we had begun working with her, this property became a new conserved site that the county and NBCT worked on together. We had originally considered selling this lot for what would have been about $1 million to build program in Arlington to protect land across the county and potentially even hire somebody to do more of that. The county, though, was much more interested in seeing us protect it. And as a result, we decided to actually put an easement on it, relinquish the development right and the value that that property had, and then consider running it as preserve. And you can go to the next slide. What we initially thought would be a nature preserve actually turned out to be a garden project. This property had terraces on it, and the woman who owned it had actually let neighbors come and plant vegetables throughout, and it had become a community garden. But it was extremely overgrown, and she hadn't had anybody on it in many years, as you can see from the picture on the left. So rather than make it what would have been about a, 3/4 of an acre nature preserve, we engaged with Friends of Urban Agriculture on an idea to plant all those terraces to create food for the Arlington Food Assistance Center. And over the course of 2 or 3 seasons of planting and of volunteerism, what you now have is on the left and or on the right, a very vibrant and growing garden in which food is harvested for those most needed in Arlington. That property is protected for all time, and the adjacent piece below by the county now protects Donaldson Run. But it was an example of an urban, community conservation project we thought was the right fit for that piece of land, rather than what a 3/4 acre, conserved spot would be. And all the trees and vegetation that was there remain, and all of the invasives have been removed. And the landowner's name was Ann Turbor. We named the property after her, and we've actually had Amazon, Nestle, and many partners out doing volunteer events, and it's been a big success story for us.
So it's just closed this past year.
It closed in 2023. So then a few examples of NBCT projects. You may drive around, especially in North Arlington, and see our signs up. Beechwood Circle is a property that abuts Military Road that some in that area probably know pretty well. We do some invasive work there, which is why it looks a lot healthier, frankly, than many of the surrounding properties. Next slide. We also protect many historic homes. This is Glebe House, and actually for the first time in I think 15 years, we're going to open it to the public for a day in March and invite you all and the public to come and see it, come see the grounds and learn a little bit more about the history of it. So looking forward to doing that with folks this spring. And then next slide. We also have a property that I think county staff know a lot about, and maybe many of you do too, because it's been a hot ticket item in 2025. And that is a very small property that we have a conservation easement on, owned by the Air Force Association, which is directly above the Custis Trail, where there has been significant conversation with the landowner about how to build a trail through that property while continuing to protect the conservation value. And I know the planning team is very sick of this project, but I'm hoping that we're gonna get to a good outcome. And NDCT spent a lot of time advising both the county and the landowner, and other stakeholders about what is possible and how to make sure we're not violating the easement by creating the trail.
The bike trail or walking trail?
Walking. It's actually quite graded, pretty steep. So actually runoff and will be a significant part of this conversation, rightfully so, or it'll end up on the trail. Next slide. So Ryan mentioned our strategic conservation work. He and our conservation director, Matt Gerhardt, I think work pretty closely together on mapping, and we engaged a few years ago with several partners, including the Chesapeake Conservancy and an organization called Biohabitats, to build what we think is the most sophisticated mapping of land conservation projects that's been done in Northern Virginia and in our region, using 24 different data sets that map everything from vulnerability, heat island, park access, urban tree canopy, and you can take some of those layers away or you can add them if you want. And so we have a regional snapshot of where we ought to be working. And as we move forward here, can take it down to the parcel level and essentially know, like, what are the 10 most important places to protect in Arlington and know what those addresses are. And what we're going to begin to do, and we are beginning to do, is actually try to find and engage those 10 people rather than hope they come find us someday, which is a needle in a haystack proposition. And so that's really new for us, and I think it's going to really transform the way we do conservation, but probably is also going to necessitate more ways in which we can engage and incentivize landowners to do it, because if we find you and you didn't want to be found, then chances are pretty good we're going to have to work hard to keep you engaged. Whereas if you called us and we're already somewhat involved, you're playing on our playing field. Next slide, please. That's a redo. Did we miss that one? Is that our fault? Yeah, next one. Okay. So if you start to get down lower in that mapping, what you end up finding is, not surprisingly, a lot of stream corridor. And we have ultimately mapped out, I mean, they look like blobs, but they're all what we see is actually connected areas of potential conservation within Arlington that you can focus on. And they would be underpinned in many cases by previously protected land or stream. And what we'll now likely be doing is working exclusively in those areas, reaching out to civic associations, reaching out to neighbors, reaching out to anybody who, through degrees of separation, can help us get to know the people that have properties that are green. And we do have a scoring mechanism now between 1 and 10, where I can look at, or we can look at any property in Northern Virginia and Arlington specifically, and tell you if that's a 9 on a conservation scale, or a 7, or a 6, or a 1. And that does also help us when somebody calls us randomly who might be interested in conservation. It helps us decide how to prioritize that project, but also means we need to be looking in these areas and being aggressive, finding conservation opportunities there, and what we're planning to do. Next slide. Not surprisingly, you all know these well, but there is significant challenge doing the work that we do. I didn't put property value up there because I almost consider it a given. But the fact that you're seeing such a loss of canopy on private land in Arlington means people have less and less land that would qualify to be conserved because it doesn't have any value, and grass and lawn does not. A lot of landowners, I think, mistake when they call us that, hey, I've got a really beautiful manicured yard with planting and grass, and it is aesthetically quite pleasing to the eye, but actually has no conservation value because along the way, they cut a lot of that out to make what is a yard. And that's not the conservation we're looking to do. I think you all spend a significant time on lot coverage as well. We're trying to get a lot more involved in the policy side of lot coverage. But as long as you're seeing that when properties change over home ownership, that just about everything is cleared along the way, whatever opportunity there ever would have been to conserve on that property is lost for a very long time. And that's assuming you replanted after that something that was worth replanting. There's also such a significant amount of landowner turnover now, not only in properties we'd like to protect, but in properties we've already protected, that often we're spending a lot of time working with people who have now bought a property that has a conservation easement on it that didn't really want it. And then we're fighting with them versus finding new places to protect. And then, of course, and I think most county board members and county leaders would make very clear and have made very clear to us that housing's the highest priority at this point. And so if there is open space, if there is a place to protect, we really have to think about it from a housing perspective before we would think about it as a space prospect. And that is a difficult paradigm for us to be working with. Next slide. We do find ourselves actually outside of Arlington working a lot with developers. It hasn't really happened here, but we're finding in Prince William County, Stafford County, actually in Loudoun County with several data centers, that we are working to not stop development, but decrease density of development and then add trails and natural features and significant amount of nature preserve in and around developments that are being planned. And though that is not the traditional conservation that many land trusts do, we actually find that it's often the only option in places where the developers got a by right ability to build many units, and in these cases, hundreds of units. But with the possibility of taking, in some cases, 200 or 300 acres out of development to build nature preserve around the communities that they're going to develop. And it turns out, not surprisingly, that property values are higher and people want to live in these places more than they want to live in other places. And so developers are starting to learn in those areas that it actually benefits us to work with land trusts. And so we'd love to find a way to do more of that in Arlington too, but we haven't found a way yet to do it in such a dense area where there isn't 500 acres to talk about. There's 5 or 8 or 10, and the number of units they want to build is 30. But we hope we can get to that, and I think our reputation has built such that the developer doesn't fear working with us, and in fact has seen that that development and conservation can coexist. Next slide. We are working a lot on public access and increasing it. This is actually a property in the city of Alexandria on Russell Road. That front lot is owned by the gentleman who owns the back home. And he said, I want to protect the front lot, and I want to put benches out there, and I want to plant a bunch of trees, and I want it to be open to the public, open for kids, open for anything that people want. But it would make me feel great to have a place that he actually grew up on, having been his playground, be something that's never developed. Right? And so these are the sort of stories that you hear more and more as people really start to regret and wish that their neighborhoods weren't turning into what they're turning into, or that they don't like what's happening. You see people taking matters into their own hands and saying, I'll create my own nature preserve on a front yard. And this is a good example of that in Alexandria that's actually getting a tremendous amount of use. Next slide. And I'll just debut that underpinning all of the work that we're doing is a nascent and growing effort to build an entire organizational arm of NPCT that's focused on the entire Potomac River corridor between Loudoun County and Stafford County. Potomac Conservancy, a partner of ours, really covers the headwaters from West Virginia down to about the Loudoun border. And then we have partners in the Northern Neck Conservancy who do a lot of conservation work on the Potomac River down where it pumps out. But we want to own, and I think will own, the protection of the Potomac, of the middle Potomac River through its most urban area. And as a lifeblood of our community, the water quality of the Potomac has unfortunately precipitously gone down in the last 5 years. There is a lot of reason to believe we need to do more to protect the river. There have been goals for 30 years to make it swimmable. It's not close. And a lot of that means protecting the land along the borders of the river so that we're eliminating runoff, and we actually have natural climate solutions to what we know is coming, and that is sea level rise along the river. So we're going to be building this campaign and hiring people specifically to do it. And I think it's an exciting way to think, not just one county or one neighborhood, but regionally, how can we make a difference? Next slide. I'll jump through these real quick, but we do have a bunch of events coming up, 2 of which are in Arlington and that we'd love to see folks at. One of which is our Conservationists of Color Open Mic Night. That is an evening in which we actually essentially do almost poetry readings of conservationists of color and their writings about why the environment matters to them. And it's a very poignant moment at Busboys and Poets in Shirlington. And then we have that Glebe House Day I mentioned in March, where we're going to open that historic property for the first time in many years for the public to see. Next slide. I hope people will get involved with us. We are very active on social media in all its different forms. And we're trying to do more of that. And I think we're interviewing people. We're doing a lot more video. We want to partner with local groups you're working with. And we're already doing a lot with organizations like Eco Action Arlington. But I think the more that we can be showing both county leadership and throughout the region that we're all working together towards a common goal, the better. Slide. We also are at almost all times looking for potential board members. The next slide after that is advisory council members. And so we're always looking for folks who might want to get more involved in this work. You all are giving of your time to this commission, and that may be what you have time to give for, but we're always looking for folks to be engaged. Mr. Klingelhofer down there gives us a lot of his time, and we're better for that.
I've never seen him in a sports jacket before.
That was at our annual gala, which we do in June. That might be as dressed up as you ever see Phil Klingelhofer. But we do an annual gala every year. Pretty much all the local elected officials of our region are there, and it's a good place to see and be seen. It'll be at Meadowlark Gardens in Vienna next June. Next slide. And yeah, the advisory council is really a group I've formed to just help me consider policy decisions and issues we should be getting engaged in. So we're looking for people to join that too, and it's fairly less intensive given that we only meet every 2 or 3 months. Next slide. So happy to answer any questions and get more involved with you and your group and what you're doing, but hopefully this is a little more helpful context in terms of what your regional land trust is doing and how we might be able to work closely together.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to open up our questions, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Connor, but Connor works for Loudoun County doing conservation monitoring, correct?
Yeah, I'm the stewardship manager. Yeah. So
we have 2 stewardship managers for our 200 properties, so each are doing 100 a year. Okay. You may be doing something similar, but it's a lot of work, and it's more and more complicated every year as people find ingenious ways to try to violate their easements.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I'm very familiar with your new easement on the Compass data center property. Exactly, very cool ecosystem. So congrats on that. I'm actually curious, have you run into any issues in Arlington with the comprehensive plan and your easements, or prospective easements conformance with the comprehensive
It's a
plan?
really good question. You do have to have comp plan approval on any conservation easement that we're about to do. And so it is standard that when we're in the process of finalizing a property, we go to the county and ensure comp plan compliance. It hasn't been a problem in Arlington up until this point. I do think with the housing push, there's always a possibility that we bring them, and we've got a couple that are in the queue right now, that we bring them a potential prospect and it wouldn't have comp plan compliance. And then we really have to figure out whether a change is going to be made or that really isn't a viable option. But it hasn't happened yet.
The residential by right. Isn't that the property owner's purview to do this?
It should be, but I mean, everybody's comp plans are different, and the county, I don't think would get involved in saying you're not going to be able to do this. It almost certainly would end up leading to looking at the comp plan and potentially making an adjustment versus you're a private landowner and we're going to attempt to, keep you from doing it, which would probably lead to litigation. But it hasn't come up at this point, so hopefully it won't, and that will continue to not be an issue. Normally, and sometimes that can come up if you end up doing a title search and it actually turns out that the ownership of the property might be more in question than people think, then that can get more tricky.
David, then Noreen.
Yeah, you mentioned that you may be talking to, or you have talked to some civic associations about, sort of specific area interests, like the ones on the map that are of high value. Has it ever come up that if a significant number of residents in a particular neighborhood were to do easements, it would help thwart the development that many of them say they don't want?
It has. It's always been an interesting idea whether anyone would band together and all do conservation together. I think we've had neighbors in Arlington consider that, but what always ends up happening is there's some stumbling block right in the middle who isn't going to do it. And so there are a lot of, and we can show streets on the map where one person conserving that property would not be valuable enough for NBCT to take the time to do it. But if 5 in a row of you did, then it would. The problem is you almost never find that all 5 are really ready to go, and that as you go through the process and you look at all the things that have to be done, that it would really happen. But I'm ready to be challenged anytime when somebody really, really does have it all together to do that. As long as there is conservation value in each of the projects, would still run on their own. I mean, you would still need to do your own conservation project. We wouldn't end up turning them into one easement. We would end up doing them all individually. You'd all still have to get through that process individually and everything that it takes to do that. But I'd love to hear from anyone who says, let's come look at something where I do think we have enough people lined up that it's worth looking at.
There would be economy of scale with that kind of thing.
I think one of the reasons it is tricky is not always, like, it actually could well be that from the point of view of our work, they just as well could have all been separate in terms of like somebody putting the work in.
But it's only valuable if they all.
Right. Now, I mean, I think if they're all exactly the same type of properties, then it does stand to reason that the easement template we would build for one of them would be almost exactly the same as the others. And that would probably save some time. But unless everybody also had the same attorney, the same, CPAs and people wanting to understand everything, you're inevitably going to get some different questions and, oh, do I get a little bit of a leeway to build out my deck here or do this there? And all of a sudden you're not actually operating anymore on these or equivalent. But it's worth talking about if people want to really look holistically at a neighborhood and that the way to do it is to band together. Happy to engage that conversation.
Got a question. Could you explain again about what you said about lawn? I thought I heard you say at one point that if a property was just lawn and nothing interesting on it, nothing to conserve. And then we saw that house in Alexandria that was nothing but lawn, and you took that.
We did take that, and I will tell you that there is some backstory there that that he had to do, and you could see some of the saplings already planted. He had to do a mandated tree planting on that property, and not just little stuff. I mean, it cost him probably $40,000 or $50,000 building to essentially create what would become forest over time. And I think if someone is willing to consider that kind of property management, then we'll take a second look at lawn.
So they have the option of
Right.
restoring, even if you're not conserving.
Right, but we won't, but rarely will we start out saying just because there isn't a home here means it's automatically conservable. I mean, we would like to see mature tree canopy on the property that we can protect. I do think in Arlington specifically, you know, it's not as though the options are so prevalent that if something comes to us, we're not going to look at it no matter what it is. But at the same time, if your plan would be, well, I have kids and I just want to continue to make it like a sports lawn for the next 20 years, that's probably not going to be particularly interesting to us. But if you want to work with us on a planting plan, and we work with experts to make sure that it'll stick, then let's talk and see where we might get.
Yeah, in terms of land acquisition, I take it that the primary method is sort of convincing people to donate the land. Do you have funds to actually purchase any of the land yourself?
Not much. We have a lot of grants. We have a lot of grants that we can activate pretty quickly, and we can get loans pretty quickly. I will say that on real short-term type projects, we're probably faster than government entities in terms of being able to cobble together money. And so we have been able to, you know, cobble together $1.5 million over 3 months to buy a property through grants, loans, and private donations. But that's not enough around here to protect much more than like a 1 or 2 acre lot. So the answer is not enough. And we're working on building endowments that many land trusts have that are gigantic, that give you that opportunity. But that takes a long time. And so, and I think, and you saw Ryan put up there the land acquisition fund amounts for the county. I mean, most of the time when we bring to the county ideas about land acquisition, because we've surfaced them as something that MBCT has heard about, often the county feels like they'd like to take the lead and be the one to acquire it rather than have us do that. And honestly, that's different than other jurisdictions. Many of the others are like, geez, if you can and you want to, we'll help, we'll do everything we can, but it's great if you'd like to do that. But that hasn't been the case here necessarily. But we work closely with the team, and I think every time a new project comes up, especially, you know, these days with budgets being like they are, it could mean that we would be more of a tip of the spear in terms of like, you have the potential and we don't right now.
Alan, how do you get the word out to the owners of properties? Is it through lawyers and you have an outreach to law firms of real estate law, or, you know, or?
Yeah, it's a variety of ways, and you know, any question that comes from you, I'm careful about, since you know us well. But you know, not enough people know about us. I think that's clear. And there's a lot of times we hear from people that if I had known you were there, I wouldn't have gone through with something that I did, or I wish I would have known that option existed. That could be hindsight being 2020, or it could be completely legitimate. A lot of what we do is word of mouth, but I think through the work we do with civic associations and part of the reason you hope that you have county relationships is the county is also letting residents know that we have a partner land trust. And I think that's something we can do more of here. And actually our communications team and the county's communications team just met this week to talk about how we spend time in 2026, having the county's website and social media letting people know there's a land trust here you should talk to. But it's a challenge because communications cost a lot of money. And in fact, you can't just use regular social media and hope you've got good content and people will see it. You've got to pay to boost all that stuff. Everybody does. So a lot of word of mouth, a lot of going to specific community leaders. We put out a newsletter, both e-newsletter and in print. And, you know, we're probably in news coverage like Arlington Now, Inside Nova, once every couple of months for different projects that we've done, but they're often not here in Arlington because we're protecting 12 to 14 new places annually, mostly in Fairfax and out.
Neil?
Yeah, couple questions. So you did mention that you have success in other counties kind of working with developers. And I'm imagining that's like kind of the character with like Loudon and like those very large counties where there's more space. So thinking kind of like analogous counties like Alexandria is probably the only other county in your portfolio that has kind of like a similar challenge that Arlington working. Property sizes are pretty small. Do you see more success working with developers there? And kind of tied into that, I know within Arlington, when we have like large developers redeveloping the property, if they're exceeding a certain floor ratio for like residences, they have to provide some sort of benefit to the public. Could that be a conversation starter for like some of their property could be provided as easement to NCVT?
Yep. So there's a couple of questions in there. Arlington is not alone in really not having been a place yet where development and conservation has sort of been done in concert. We're not really doing it in the city of Alexandria either. Though it's interesting that you bring up redevelopment because and sometimes I even call it post-apocalyptic, but like the interesting irony of some of the changes we're seeing in land use patterns and the fact that office space is a lot less necessary here as a result of post-COVID hybrid work means that a lot of things are being redeveloped that I think you could argue were not done in any sort of green sustainable way before that you could get right now. And how about bringing in the land trust to help advise on what those green spaces ought to be? And is an HOA actually going to run it that's going to overrun it, or are they going to actually manage it properly? And then we end up doing a lot of HOA advising or even taking on land from HOAs. And so an example of one place we're trying to be involved in that's closer in is the redevelopment of Landmark, which you can all see from the highway, the old Landmark Mall. You know, an incredible opportunity, I think, to create something better than what was there from a green, sustainable stormwater point of view. It couldn't have been worse. And so we spend, and in some cases, developers are really willing to sit down and have those conversations with us. Usually what we demand out of those conversations is that you're at least willing to put on the table more to protect as open space than you're demanded because of RPAs or undevelopable land. Because if that's all you've got, then and you're not willing to put anything else on the table, then we don't have a role here. We can't make it better than you are going to make it. But I think these opportunities continue. And Arlington has a few of them as well, where you get a sizable, you know, a sizable property that's changing hands and is going to be redeveloped, where I think it hasn't happened yet, but I think some of those relationships that we've built in other counties hopefully brandish the reputation to be able to do it here too. Whether that be you know, what's the hotel in Roslyn, or, you know, you name some of these sites, like, is there an opportunity to do anything better and more sustainably green than what it was before, which should be a pretty low bar, but you'd be surprised.
Oh, thanks for the great presentation. But as I recall, I can't remember if it was you or somebody else from Trust.
Might have been Matt.
A couple of years ago, right? Made a presentation.
Probably Matt.
I'm forgetting if we took any action afterwards, but I forgot entirely about this issue of taxes. There's no tax relief and all for this. Interesting enough, at the county board meeting on Saturday, when the public comments was about climate change. What can the county do to encourage homeowners, give them financial incentives to do things to help on the climate change issue? This would seem to be a good one. Did we write a letter last time? Did we write a letter?
Well, no, when I spoke, I wanted to.
So can we follow up with the tax idea? No.
Recent.
Good. Well, can we follow up on these? I am not here. I'm not playing. It's like,
One number in particular.
Ross question.
Plot that down.
I think it's worth continuing to raise, even if this isn't going to be the budget environment to do it in. The more that it comes up and that it's seen as a good idea that we should get to when we can, I think the pump is better primed, but it sticks out. I mean, it really does. It's something Arlington doesn't offer.
well, use a little bit of money on a few properties on the hand, save money on the stormwater abatement and the things. That's aside from all the other benefits that come with it.
Be part of our letter.
Yeah, I think it would be.
Well, in the context of comp plan being redone, should be reminded and maybe opportunities there.
I think it would be grossly overestimated any number that would actually come out of that would even be a drop in the bucket.
And I think he's done some interesting work here, making use of new technology, getting information, of like there are certain areas of Arlington where this is particularly key. Yeah. So it isn't like to the county, you're saying, what, I very talking, I don't know, but it's more like there are certain areas this would be beneficial. Right. We could probably afford whatever tax laws come to that because benefits and the dimensions are so great, but the financial ones aren't. Right. Or what have you.
Yeah, and there's no reason you couldn't pilot it, honestly. And if you really did have a run on the market, decide then that you're going to, try to figure out how to control it. But like, I don't know why that would be a reason to not do it on the front end, because I really don't think it would change much. But I think it's worth continuing to push the board that it's important.
More members of climate.
You think, right? Yeah. Any other questions, Alex?
I would say that, so last year, we found, and we mentioned this, that there was it was very controversial to get the county to cough up the money to remain a partner of the BCT. And there are some of us on another committee who were postulating that perhaps this was because at least some of the decision makers in the county just either don't know what you guys do or don't value it sufficiently. And so I'm glad to hear that you all have been doing more work with the county staff. I'm sure this has been ongoing for some years. I don't know what the key is to unlock this, but I mean, anything that you all can do on your end to make it clearer to these decision makers that you provide a lot of value to the county and that this should not be so difficult every year.
Yeah, I mean, and we work great with staff. That's certainly never been the issue. And I think, honestly, what I think it comes down to is that it does take time to protect new places. And it can be 5, 7, 8 years in between new conserved property. And I think what I hear from the board is, it just doesn't seem like you're getting anything done if we don't see that you're protecting something new. And if you look at the amount of effort it takes to protect the 35 to 40 places we already have in Arlington, plus steward the relationships that will probably end up like the Turbor property someday, that's what you're investing in. What is essentially less than 1 FTE. But it's really become a flashpoint over the last few years that has gone from regular, well-supported funding to something that is really sort of bitterly fought over every year, which honestly takes a lot of our time to fight for it that we're then not doing on the conservation. So I'll be working with every board member throughout the next few months to really continue to hone in on that, and we talk to them every year about what we do and why it matters. And I will do it again. And I do think that the community outpouring of support that we got last year was one of the reasons we got another year, at which point we were told, be prepared, it might be your last. So plan.
Tax relief might accelerate the number of people
Well, that's the irony. I mean, I do think if you want more places to protect, I mean, incentivizing people to do that would give us more to do if what we're doing isn't enough. I mean, at some point, if conservation easements are not going to be the ticket here in Arlington because you don't have development rights to give up anymore, then we would probably be working to create some sort of voluntary program where the type of land management you're doing on your property is then something the county can credit you for. And then we would monitor that you are protecting your trees and eradicating invasives and you name other checklists of things. But it wouldn't be permanent, conservation for all time, but it would be a way to have landowners signed up in a program that say you abut a county park. If you do all these things, you're getting supported, and we would monitor it like we monitor a perpetual conservation. That may be where we head over the years if there aren't enough easements to keep the relationship going.
Okay. One last question.
Quick thought, and maybe it's a silly one, but in a lot of the areas that you've identified as being high priority, some of those areas have individual property sites that are fairly significant in size for Arlington. So what about floating the idea that portion of a property that's not already built, doesn't have a built footprint, can have a tax abatement, but you still pay taxes on the built part? And then you kind of plug it into the.
Yeah, that's something,
plug it into
that's something to consider.
Yeah, as long as they, and as an incentive, as long as that it becomes naturalized and conserved.
Yeah.
And not a baseball field.
Yeah.
As much as I
No,
like.
and we do easements all the time where, I mean, the building itself is carved out of the easement and all we're doing is protecting what's around it. But yeah, I think we're gonna have to get innovative in that way. And we've been working at the state level with elected officials who would like to find a way to incentivize people not to, do, complete clear out and rebuild of property. Can you actually get an incentive for not, taking your lot line to the edge and you keep the trees standing? Because in some ways you could actually create part of the housing missing middle stuff you always wanted to, if you're actually incentivize people to keep the footprint of the home where it is when it gets sold. And by doing that, you'd also protect a lot of canopy. So there are some people at the state level starting to look at this, but being a Dillon rule state, there's a lot that it takes to do that. And you don't have a ton of people in the legislature looking to help Northern Virginia. So it just takes time.
All right. Well, thank you. We really appreciate you taking the
Happy to
time.
help. Yeah.
It's great to have you.
Look forward to continuing to engage, and we'd be happy to get on any of your, civic association list to speak and present this year. We try to do a circuit every couple of years, and some are coming back around, and the more that we can be telling people about what we do and engaging, the better.
Right.
We'll be there.
Good.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.
Have something else before you go?
Oh, I left 3 kids at home to manage themselves, so maybe I'll take one for each.
For the record, the last presentation was in 2022, and that wasn't it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Good. Thank you. I love the fact that you.
So,
Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you right on.
before we finish.
Correct.
Right. So in that sense,
Yes.
in that sense, you have a post FNRC after this, so we have to add these two.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good information. Okay, so send around the 2025 draft year-end report and the 2026 work plan. And I got a bunch of comments back, so thank you for those. Got a bunch of typos and improved things. So are there any additional comments, questions, and anything?
On the work plan, if I'm recalling correctly, I just had a chance to read it last night. First of all, is our monitoring the low residential study. Does it have a, but he has a one copy. Well, if I, My question was actually, should we have the comprehensive plan? Yes, thank you.
It's on there.
Did I go right by it?
Yeah, it's on there as far as, but you're talking about for the work plan or for the 2025 annual report?
No, for the work plan. Wait,
Flip. That might not be the page you want.
It's in there,
that was,
under planning, under comprehensive. plan. Maybe it's not there. Anyway, it is,
I saw the second bullet is low residential. See the comp right here. but not see anything.
listed along with. Okay. Why I send it out ahead?
Why I look at it, I should take a look and I can see it, that's why I want to look at it. And I'm also admitting I may have to read the
Okay, so you're talking about the word.
work plan, what we are thinking of doing in the coming year.
Under the planning, let's see.
Transportation plan, so there was site plan review.
You're searching for the low density residential.
Oh, you're sorry, okay,
I'm talking about the comprehensive.
okay, so it's, okay, you're right, it was in this, it was in the 2025.
Yeah,
So you want me to add that?
Well,
it's not completed.
David's on the case and it's,
Okay.
this is our plan for the
Okay,
next year.
I stand,
Okay, so we're gonna be working in monitoring that
Yeah.
technology,
okay.
like residential. Okay, so
Yeah,
that was
it was
my.
in there, it was in the, it's in the,
I think that's maybe
Yeah.
read this one. Okay,
okay. I'll
that's my
have
one
that.
on that one. Thank you very much.
Okay, anything else?
Nope. Good page.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Dorian. Having that. For not including them. Okay, with that addition, so what we had discussed at the last meeting is that we'll go ahead and send out the annual report. And this week, I guess. And usually by the end of the year, and then we'll wait until January to send out the work plan.
Then you'll know who to address it to.
Then I'll know who to address it to, right? Yes, sure. So with that change, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Yep. Second.
Is there any other discussion? Any other comments from anyone? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Lisa, I really.
Glad you could join us.
That counts double.
Lisa and Bill? Do you have?
Aye.
Thank you. And Bill? Did we lose Bill somewhere in the translation? Okay, we'll put him as. Okay, so any opposed? I didn't hear from Bill and no abstention, so I don't know how you want it. Abstention? Okay, that would be great. Okay, good. Thank you very much. And thanks for pointing that out. Josh, I'm so confident. I was overly confident, so.
I was also.
No, I appreciate that. Then the other one was the invasive plant treatment letter. And I sent that out, also got some comments, appreciate that. So are there any other additional comments on that? Questions?
It was a great letter.
Yeah, that's very good. I agree.
But, and I did, one thing though, one of the comments, did I set the background? I think I did set a background, was linking it to the FNRP. So I put those back in.
I thought you had references to that in there, whatever I.
Okay, so I couldn't remember.
It's in there.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Yeah.
That was one of the updated versions. Okay, so that said too. Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I did take for a motion, right? I did ask for a motion.
No.
Okay.
Just gonna ask you.
Let me back up. Don't vote yet. Okay, is there a motion on the invasive species funding?
Yes. To send it.
So
as
moved
written.
and seconded. Okay, now is there any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Lisa, are you okay on this one as well?
Yep, aye.
Okay, and if Bill comes back with us, we'll note that. Thank you. Any opposed? And no abstentions. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Sorry for. Okay, so then we've got the November minutes and I think you got a few minor comments on those.
Yeah, I have some technical comment, and I will also say that I re-reviewed our guidance on how to write minutes. You're going to find them to be much shorter, so my private editor. Noreen has been sending me technical edits for almost every minutes that I've sent around. So they're probably going to be even shorter, compact, mostly focused on the motions and action. But yeah, I did not have any substantive changes that I received.
Okay, great. And with minutes, I'm pretty sure we don't need a motion.
I don't think you do, but you do need the photo.
Okay, so everybody had a chance to take a look. Okay, all those in favor of supporting the November meeting minutes?
Aye.
Connor will put you in as abstention since you were. Now, Lisa, you were there, but you were here at the last meeting, right? Are you on also?
Yes, aye.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, that seems to be.
I have a couple quick staff reports
Okay.
to highlight. I spoke about our promotion of Cornica Stover to urban forester last time. She's now started, she's rounded off the tree planting season, which was her previous position. She's starting work on plans for DES projects. Then I had a short discussion with Mr. Handler earlier about the Likey Garden site plan. This is something a little bit tricky that coworker Jose Portando is working on. They may have to shift their building a little bit, which is always a hard pull to properly conserve a large oak tree on their site. So we're hoping that will be doable. And then we've got several requests about some tree vandalism along Arlington Boulevard near North Courthouse Road of newly planted, county planted trees. We have no idea who did it. We have a police report.
So they're new trees.
Yeah, 7 American elms that were planted, and I think somebody just kind of hung on and broke them all. So we're going to remove and replace them. I put signs out there that you may see our standard sign of telling people that it's a misdemeanor.
Please don't do this.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Put a camera up there.
Right, it feels a little silly to put those signs out, but we started to realize that people don't even know that you can't do this, or make sure it's it's along Arlington Boulevard, but near Courthouse Road. It's actually not far from right here. Right. Near that overpass with the art on the side. But this is not the only place we've seen this. We've seen a variety of tree vandalism. I'm fairly sure that it's not the same person. Dog damage, quite extensive dog damage at Fort Bernard. Some people just cutting trees at Zachary Taylor, actually right next to the MVCT property. What was the other one? Some historically, a couple of years ago at Brandymore Castle, some tree damage, and then in Alexandria and Arlington on the Alexandria border, near Beauregard Street and on Walter Reed, just some trees just being snapped or cut.
Yeah,
for no clear reasons.
Few signs be good. I mean, this
Yeah.
on Route 50 shoulder where you've planted something in our neighborhood planted. So we cut down one of the cedars and it occurred to me, it was like a year ago around November, December. It's like, yeah, it looks like somebody got themselves a free Christmas tree here.
Yeah.
In terms of timing, size of.
At least that
the
makes
tree.
sense.
Well, it makes sense. You're thinking, yeah, public land trees are going here. Why not? I'm speculating, but you do wish you put up a sign like people actually made an effort to plant these things.
This is not yours.
Yeah, kind of some public land.
Yeah.
It's a
little tricky on VDOT land because they actually don't have a regulation. This area of Arlington Boulevard is kind of in between county right of way and VDOT right of way, but it doesn't matter because it's still benefits of county property. So that's unfortunate, and we're not sure what to do except put the signs out and replace the trees right now. That's what we're doing.
And keep monitoring it.
Yeah.
Catch it, so we should all be
24/7 rain.
citizens at best, right?
Yeah, if somebody sees it, take pictures of license plates, call the police. It's a misdemeanor.
Okay.
This is not a park ranger kind of thing.
I think it's a misdemeanor myself.
We should do like an All Now well-placed article or something. It doesn't need to do it through the county, but.
Yeah, we just learned about it this week, so we may reach out. That's maybe
Yeah.
not the best timing for news article,
But maybe in January.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow, that's too bad.
yeah, that sucks. That was it.
That was the question I was gonna ask about staff reports.
Okay.
Any other questions for Vincent?
Well, I just want to flag, I listened in the housing commission meeting a week or so ago that as happened was going over Waverly Gardens, London Gardens, and the Walgreens development. And it was kind of eye-opening to see Langston development plan coming into being, if you will. And great, they're building the affordable housing, so on and so forth, but I was also struck there's going to be overdevelopment here. That they're putting in a lot of units very quickly. They're going to replace, put in quite a bit of impervious service, I'll level up the traffic issues. And you're talking first about Waverly Gardens, so it's like the first one up, and saw the traffic plan. Yeah, that'll work until they do the 2 or 3 other developments that are on books, or on the 3 or 4 other ones that aren't on the books yet. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. And for those of you that have been doing the open person's work on the site plan, yeah, I think we're gonna have a work cut out for us to provide that.
Well,
Vincent reassured me that there's gonna be a higher proportion of sites supposed to have tree cover. But even by that standard, I think it's going to be interesting to happen for the next few years.
So at least if we've got the Langston Boulevard plan.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just like Pentagon City, we've got a plan to look at. So it's, it's a problem in Boston because the plan is so old that it's irrelevant. But at least with Langston Boulevard and World, their feet to the fire. And I mean, I was encouraged, sorry to go off on.
I'm curious to have some of these reaction actually.
Well, and then I did speak, and that's where we saw you on Saturday at the River House project. And I was mostly focusing on the need to follow the Pentagon City sector plan because we all spent a heck of a lot of time on it. And, so I think that should be the refrain that we have on a lot of these site plans too, is that especially when we spend all this time to just turn around and ignore it. But I think we really appreciate the advice of staff too on helping us with the site plan process to know when. I mean, you can't target when they're not, when they're. So, I just think staying informed is really important as far as our role in the process.
Okay.
And I appreciate the folks who have taken on the site plan review. Okay, any other reports from commissioners? I didn't have any report on Energy. We didn't meet.
I just had one thing on the sort of our informal parks team. I think Ryan mentioned the 3 urban parks project that's near Virginia Square metro stop just across Wilson from there. So that's still for another few days till the 21st, I think. You can do online survey comments if you'd like. It's an interesting project because they're tackling 3 parks that are, a block or 2 apart from each other and trying to create some ways to have connectivity between them. But the other thing is that in sort of keeping up with all of the different park projects over the last few years, I realized this fall that I'm pretty sure that the list that the county has by status has fallen out of date. So I checked with Irina and she's gonna work on that because it's got, Arlington Junction, which is down there in Pentagon City, which is almost completed, is still listed as being in the design stage. And there are a few others that are not current. So I think that would help everyone identify the ones that are in that window of opportunity between in planning and in design, where that's where you have the best chance to have input. So if you ever go on that website, Parks Projects or Arlington Projects, you can get it alphabetically, you can get it by status, which is these different stages in the process, and those are the ones to look at. And it really helps. There's quite a few of them, maybe 30 or 40 that are listed at any one time. So it's helpful to have them up to date as to where they are in the process. Once they get into construction, we're interested in the outcome, but as far as having any input, we're done with that. So we need to hit them at the right time.
But yeah, I think weighing in both individually is really effective because.
Yeah, not all of them really rise to the level of needing to take the time in a meeting or do a letter. But if at least some of us do the online survey and are saying essentially the same kinds of things, I think that does help. It does make a difference.
Yeah. Okay. Stephen, do you have anything on APS?
Nothing real big. We had a meeting last week. with Bill and Bob, and it seemed good. We have some little steps that we're going to try and follow up going forward to increase some coordination and that sort of thing with the county. So hopefully that will become fruitful for us.
Great, thank you. Appreciate you all taking that on. Leslie, do you have anything you want to report to us now that you're new on the job?
No, I think we're on like day 11, so still just listening and learning.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Sure.
So then I'm going to move to new business. Josh had a couple, any other reports from anybody else? Committee reports, anything else? Okay. Josh had raised the issue that Susan Land talked about as well. Thank you, Vincent, for that very informed report. And I don't know if anybody has any questions for Vincent about that. When I saw that and the multiple stems too, it's like, oh yeah, this one had a problem. This was, and for people who are not used to looking at trees, I think it doesn't look like it has a problem, but I could totally see why that one was on the list.
Well, could see on the one hand, well, a larger framework thinking about it. If you want to put it, be careful what you wish for. I feel we had a parallel conversation about the work that Dominion Energy is doing along along the WD Trail, that somehow maintenance on trees has been off for 10 or 20 or 30 years. They've all grown up around us, used to that. And now suddenly money is found, maybe to keep data centers going, who knows, but it's like, oh my God. And so county finally found money to do tree maintenance on tree streets here in the county. And these trees have grown to be very beautiful and prominent in neighborhoods. So people quite logically have very strong emotional and psychological attachments to it. And our kind of plea to Dominion, and to a certain degree, I think, plea to the county was, yes, we know you have a plan, but let's not be too bureaucratic about it. If we can be flexible, and let's be a little more gentle. That psychology of people that live in the neighborhoods, which these trees was beautifying these many decades. So I think that's part of the frustration here. And also, I can't speak to responsiveness or not. It's more the perception the county is not responsive to engage in a dialogue that maybe it has softened the blow, but made it less abrupt, and just came across as very, very credit. We have this plan, tree's dangerous, and boom, it's gone. So, and some people in the neighborhood seem to be willing to live with whatever period of liability was there. So I think from their perspective, it could be dealt with more gently and more responsively, and a little bit more empathy to their perceptions. That's kind of what I wanted to say at this point. So I would encourage you, as this program goes forward, be aware of this. And I think it was doubly impactful because we had the huge struggle, of course, with the non-redwood and certain trees on private property that were very upsetting people over the years. We had a discussion of the specimen tree development. So this was on public property. And so it isn't like the county and county staff owns it. We all own it collectively. I think that was very frustrating to people that it was not dealt with that. So that's what I wanted to say on this topic.
And then you had the other one.
Moving on, another one. So let's please.
Could I just add a question, actually, in this particular case that was brought up? This is a tree that was known to be unhealthy and unviable by the county, right? It was
discovered in the course of the proactive inspection.
So I'm thinking of, trying to think of from the county's point of view, if a tree is known to be seriously suspect and the likelihood of, in even a modest wind, it could get split or blown over and cause damage or injury. If the county already knows that that's the situation, does that make the county legally liable for damages? And how does that come into play in the conversation? Because it's one thing that I can have the public outreach in a way that's gentle and appreciative of people caring for things we all care about. But on the other hand, when it comes to getting sued because of neglect, that's another story in terms of the county's response. So that's where I'm heading with that.
Yeah, that's kind of the double-edged sword of a proactive inspection. We then find things, and if we find things and do not act on them, and anybody could at any time be underneath this tree. It's not just the immediate neighbors, or not even just the people in Lion Park. This is a fairly not busy, but a regularly traveled road, Fillmore Street. It's not one of the back roads of that neighborhood. Anybody who's driving, walking, or otherwise near that tree could be at risk. So there were suggestions of having the nearby homeowners sign a liability form. That's not really an option either, but they're not the only ones who are liable or may be impacted by the tree in question. Andrew was actually the person who did the inspections. He's the primary forester on the circuit tree maintenance program. I'm happy to show you more pictures, or if the email was enough to explain this, I'm happy to speak through that as well.
Can I ask a bit about the time? So you all did reach out to the Civic Association in advance of the proactive evaluation, so you didn't have any trees that had been selected or you knew were going to have to be dealt with at the Civic Association. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we have, as part of our communication, our standard communication for this program is kind of fourfold. We have a message to the Civic Association president who can share that with their community in whichever way they do that. And we recognize that that's not perfect. Not everybody in the community hears the messages from the Civic Association president, but it's the least worst way to do that. And we also put out signs in the neighborhood for those people who might not know that. The signs are in English and Spanish. They have a QR code on them if you want to learn about the program. And then we reach out to the Civic Association after the inventory is completed with the amount of trees to be pruned, to be removed, stumps to be treated. Stump treated is stump grinding usually. And then for trees that are not obviously at risk, if you just look at it from a distance or from a layperson side, we also put a sign on the tree saying that the tree is scheduled for removal with a email link to our urban forestry mailbox. So that's our standard communication protocol. Then with this particular neighborhood, they also requested a meeting, so we met for a little bit over an hour. I think you stayed a little bit longer than I did. Over Teams with I think 19 people in the community.
Did you explain to them what was in your photos in terms of the damage to the tree? No. It's kind of all the above are true. Is going to be, this is a lesson for everybody. Communication, a lot was done. There just may need to be more every once in a while for some key trees, if you will. And keep that in mind. And in fact, this hasn't been done for years. So, and a little sorry we had to take this one. Plus, trying to move quickly to replant with something that would be decent there would ease the pain, if you will.
Well, and we see this a lot.
And you did that, but I don't.
You know, whatever the project is, and you're trying to do it, and you think you've hit all the, everything you're supposed to do, but there's always people that come out of the woodwork. What? I didn't know about this. I didn't know. So.
There's out of the woodwork versus we have a rather magnificent tree here.
Yeah, I guess I'm interested in where the surprise came from. Was it like an abrupt 2 days after the meeting it's coming down, or okay, yeah. So I'm interested in where, because I saw this posting quite a lot, and it makes it sound like there was nothing happening. So it's interesting where there's still kind of this active frustration despite the efforts on your end to kind of make sure everybody's aware of the situation and the necessity of it.
I think our first outreach was sometime in October, and the tree eventually was removed last week.
Did they make other requests other than just not cutting it down?
There were requests for a second opinion by a private arborist. We do not take second opinions because that could lead to all. That's a Pandora's box. Right. But the second opinion does come internally, and people aren't necessarily satisfied by this. But when Andrew completes his inventory and he has these controversial trees, as we kind of see them, He always checks with me and sometimes also other foresters in the unit to double check and kind of like ground truth this to make sure that that makes sense. And then I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I agree with you. I've yet to disagree with you, but I'm sure it'll happen. And then the only people we'll hear the yelling are inside of it. That's our second opinion, and people were very frustrated that they couldn't have a second opinion, kind of like you would with a doctor. But the county is the entity taking on all the liability for this. There's nobody who can take on the liability for this tree, even if they wanted to. Unless they bought the right of way somehow, but anyway, that's going.
Those are put under an NPCT easement.
Yes. But even MVCT probably, I know MVCT manages for tree risk as well on their properties. And then there were some discussions about cabling. We did some research on cabling. It's not realistic. You have to cable something to something that is viable. So
You can't just, do it.
right, if you have if you say you have a 4-trunk oak and 3 of the trunks are fairly solid and 1 of them is not, you could tie it to those 3 trunks. But if you have 7 relatively unstable trunks on a Zocofa tree, that makes it really hard. And that force from wind or whatever force is acting on it still has to go somewhere. So if you tie something to something else, then that something else gets twice the force. And then you have actually
No question about Zelkovas. I don't really know much about them. I know we have a lot of them planted. Do they typically have multiple stems like that, or was that a stump sprout?
no, that's very typical.
Okay, so
Particularly the cultivated varieties, which is one, right, like it likely was. They used to, I think they're still in the elk family, right? Almost.
Yeah, I think they've always.
Yeah.
As hackberry.
So elms are also kind of that like
Right.
vase form, sometimes a little bit different, more like broad. And they can often, not dissimilar to the Bradford or Cali pear, form those
which are
incomplete weak unions at the
Yeah.
bottom. Not quite as bad as the Cali pears. Yeah, that's one of the characteristics. They are usually lower, like there's shorter trees than say tulip trees or oaks. And they can get pretty large. So, but yeah, that's one of the characteristics, and it's been there for about 40 years based on historic analysis, and in a fairly compacted soil. Although it seems like it was taken care of by the neighbors watering, which I'm sure lengthened its lifespan.
I think another challenge is that this has been identified as a key tree by the neighbors, but you don't know that, right? It's not like they send you a list ahead of time, so these are our key trees. So
No, but you found out.
I'm not sure.
you're going to evaluate all of them.
Right.
It's also irrelevant to
It
the
is actually
ultimate
it's
situation.
important to them, but it is on the county's property, and they all need to be evaluated equally.
Yeah, mildly editorial is that in Britain, they have these legacy trees because they only have like 5 trees left in the country. That they do absolutely nothing to, like even because they want to conserve every component of it, including whatever risk they might pose to the surrounding buildings. And that's the other extreme end of things. But also the US is a little bit more litigious, and that our focus has been mitigating risk. But obviously we don't want people to get injured from our trees, whether we get sued for it or.
right. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate that. And then, did you want to bring up that other issue?
Well, another issue that came up with the county board on Saturday was somebody in the Ballston area brought up perhaps a shortcoming in compliance with whatever was approved the plan, the 11th Street in Vermont development, where I was left with the impression, I'm only half hear it, that they were under the impression they were going to get some those things like grass and trees actually planted in the ground. And this ended up being a tree and a planter with a little bit better than a folding chair next to it, just folding space. I exaggerated a little bit, but that was an interesting part of the county board members. So I just wanted to flag that for the group. And relatedly, I think Zataka said something about the auditor is working on some report that will seem to deal with a number of these compliance issues of whatever has been constructed, have been met, whatever was promised. So way of flagging the group is brought up. I don't know if we need to look into this specific property or get a little briefing on what happened, but I certainly think whenever this auditor report comes out, it seems like maybe some of you heard of it. I don't know, that we get a presentation on that, particularly if it covers
Yeah,
the
this was
green
thing
space.
10 years ago. I remember
aspect.
back when we were seeing all sorts of site plans going through and it's like, well, this is what was in the site plan and this is what we got.
Yeah,
And
that's-
it was public spaces, it was all sorts of things that were not being met. And, we tried shining a light on it and they did hire an auditor at some point and then I guess they fired the auditor or something. I don't know, but it was not consistent. But I think it's good to know, it's good to highlight these things and, we spend a lot of time on these and we try to get the plans right. So we just want to make sure that actually.
There were actually two phases that were of concern. One is what hadn't been completely planned and mapped out and okayed prior to the county board approval. So there's a kind of a mystery meat of like what you didn't know, which included landscaping plans at the time. It didn't have any guarantees about, aside from a general description. Now it's much tighter than that, but 10 years ago it was not. And then you were on the planning commission at the time, right? And then the second part was then after those other plans and with all the staff approvals and everything else, then what the developer actually ends up doing on the ground before the occupancy is settled. And sometimes that, got a little bit less robust.
I encourage her to come make a presentation to us so we can learn straight from her what had gone on. But if you have a few spare minutes, it wouldn't take you long to find her presentation and the county board video from Saturday. And
Yeah, it was
you
general
could-
comment.
Whatever I may have garbled, you could hear directly from
Anyway, I
her
think
and
it's good to
understand
like,
better.
yeah. So thank you. Okay, if there's anything else, thank you, kept you past 9 o'clock, I apologize, but it do take some focus and we have that time, season, happy new year.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for the cookies.
Thank you.